Explain to what extent the Black Power philosophy instilled confidence amongst African Americans to challenge discrimination in the United States of America from the 1960s to 1970s. This question requires you to explain the extent to which Black Power philosophy instilled confidence amongst African Americans to challenge discrimination in the United States of America from the 1960s to 1970s. You are expected to support your line of argument with relevant historical evidence. In the introduction, start with a clear statement explaining what the Black Power philosophy was and its core aim. State your position in relation to the question whether you agree or not and provide an outline of how you will support your line of argument. The background. Write an effective background for the question by highlighting that many African Americans lived in urban ghettos and slum areas, facing poor housing and under-resourced public services, which created a lack of self-worth and pride. Show how these socioeconomic conditions fostered frustration and a deep sense of exclusion. Add that by the mid-1960s, many African Americans became frustrated with the slow progress of the civil rights movement. While laws were changing, the lived reality for many Black people remained harsh and unequal. Indicate that by the mid-1960s, many African Americans became frustrated with the slow progress of the civil rights movement. While laws were changing, the lived reality for many Black people remained harsh and unequal. End the background by noting that police brutality and racial violence further angered African American communities, contributing to the rise of Black nationalist ideas and creating the environment for the emergence of the Black Power philosophy. The body. When writing the body of the essay, begin by grouping your points into logical themes, such as leadership and Black pride, community programs, educational empowerment, and political progress. Each paragraph should focus on one key idea, starting with a clear topic sentence that directly links to how the Black Power philosophy instilled confidence. Fully explain each point by stating what was done, why it was significant, and how it boosted confidence among African Americans to challenge discrimination. Use linking phrases like, as a result, or this further empowered, to ensure a smooth flow of ideas. Finally, end each paragraph by explicitly tying it back to the question, showing how the point helped African Americans resist racial injustice with greater courage and pride. The conclusion. Write a strong conclusion by clearly stating your overall judgment, whether the statement is true to a large extent, small extent, or somewhere in between. Then briefly summarize the key ideas you discussed in your body paragraphs without repeating too many specific details. Show that you've weighed different sides of the argument and acknowledge any limitations or opposing views. End with a final comment that reinforces your main position and highlights the broader significance or impact of the issue. Here is the full essay. The introduction. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, African Americans in the United States confronted deep-rooted racial discrimination and social injustice. In the midst of growing frustration with the slow pace of civil rights reforms, a new philosophy began to take shape, one that emphasized racial pride, self-reliance, and a more assertive stance against oppression. This philosophy, known as Black Power, emerged as a powerful ideological and practical response to continued marginalization. It offered an alternative to passive resistance by promoting empowerment, community control, and cultural affirmation. This essay critically asserts that the Black Power philosophy instilled a renewed sense of confidence among African Americans to challenge racial discrimination in the United States of America in more assertive, transformative, and self-determined ways. This argument will be supported by examining the philosophy's role in promoting Black political and economic independence, the rise of grassroots community organizations like the Black Panther Party, and the celebration of Black culture and identity as tools of resistance and empowerment. Background. Despite the legal advances brought by the civil rights movement, many African Americans in the 1960s continued to face harsh realities that limited true equality. Decades of institutionalized discrimination, rooted in the legacy of Jim Crow laws, left African Americans economically disadvantaged and politically underrepresented. In many urban areas, Black communities were confined to overcrowded ghettos, plagued by poverty, poor housing, and inadequate public services. These conditions fostered a deep sense of disillusionment and eroded individual and collective pride. The slow and often superficial nature of reforms frustrated those who sought meaningful change. Additionally, frequent instances of police brutality served as painful reminders of systemic racism, fueling anger and intensifying the desire for a more radical approach. In response to these injustices, a growing sense of Black nationalism sentiments and a demand for radical empowerment and self-determination took hold. It was within this context that the Black Power philosophy emerged as a radical alternative to nonviolent protest and a more assertive and empowering approach to fighting racial discrimination through empowerment of African Americans with confidence required to challenge racial oppression in all its forms. This philosophy called for political and economic control within Black communities, protection against police brutality, and freedom from white authority. The Black Panther Party, BPP, founded in 1966 by Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, became the most prominent embodiment of the Black Power philosophy. Unlike the nonviolent strategies of the civil rights movement, the Panthers adopted a militant approach centered on armed self-defense against police brutality. Their practice of policing the police, patrolling Black neighborhoods with law books and firearms to monitor law enforcement, was revolutionary. In order to propagate its message and advance its objectives, Black Power philosophy put forward inspiring leadership such as Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael. These leaders played a crucial role in reshaping the mindset of African Americans by rejecting passivity and promoting a bold, self-empowered approach to the struggle for justice. Malcolm X was central to the early formation of Black Power ideology. As a prominent voice in the Nation of Islam, and later as an independent activist, Malcolm X championed the right to armed self-defense in response to white oppression. He rejected the idea of Black victimhood and encouraged African Americans to protect themselves and their communities against racist violence. By openly stating that bloodshed was a necessary price for revolution, he linked the fight for equality to the broader idea of Black nationalism, which emphasized self-rule, political autonomy, and the rejection of white authority. His philosophy gave African Americans the confidence to resist domination and demand justice on their own terms. Malcolm X also laid a strong moral foundation for empowerment by promoting self-respect, self-discipline, and Black pride. These values were essential in rebuilding the damaged self-image of African Americans, who had long suffered under the weight of systemic racism. By encouraging self-esteem and self-help, Malcolm X helped restore dignity and inspired African Americans to believe in their worth. Equally influential was Stokely Carmichael, who advanced Malcolm X's ideas by coining the term Black Power and giving the movement political clarity. Carmichael broke away from the nonviolent tactics of earlier civil rights campaigns, arguing that peaceful protest had failed to stop the relentless violence inflicted on African Americans. He advocated for a more assertive and militant strategy that emphasized self-determination and Black control over political and economic institutions. His speeches and activism gave African Americans a new vocabulary and strategy for resistance, empowering them to confront discrimination directly and unapologetically. Together, Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael inspired millions of African Americans to transform fear into courage, passivity into action, and disillusionment into a confident demand for justice and equality, to defend their rights and challenge systemic discrimination with a renewed sense of purpose and strength. Furthermore, Black Power called on African Americans to seek complete freedom from white authority by rejecting both the psychological and institutional control that had historically been imposed upon them. This process of liberation was not limited to political or economic resistance, but extended deeply into the realm of identity and self-worth. The movement emphasized the importance of reclaiming cultural pride as a means to undo the internalized inferiority that centuries of white supremacy had embedded in the minds of many African Americans. By promoting the Afro hairstyle and African-inspired clothing, Black Power encouraged individuals to visibly embrace their heritage and reject European standards of beauty and social conformity. These cultural symbols served as daily affirmations of dignity and self-acceptance, enabling African Americans to assert pride in their roots. The powerful slogan "Black is Beautiful" became a rallying cry for this transformation, helping to dismantle the shame and self-rejection instilled by racism. Through this cultural awakening, Black Power redefined what it meant to be Black in America, no longer something to be hidden or suppressed, but something to be celebrated openly. This cultural shift played a vital role in empowering African Americans with the confidence, pride, and sense of self-determination needed to confront injustice with renewed strength and unshakable identity. At the heart of the BPP's strategy was its 10-point plan, a manifesto that articulated clear demands for Black liberation. Unlike the civil rights movement's appeals for integration, the 10-point plan was uncompromising in its call for full employment, decent housing, quality education that included accurate African American history, and an immediate end to police brutality. This document was not merely a list of grievances, but a blueprint for self-determination. It resonated deeply with Black communities disillusioned by empty promises of gradual reform. The Panthers didn't just demand change, they enacted it through their survival programs, which proved African Americans could meet their own needs without relying on a discriminatory state. In addressing the structural racism and systemic neglect, African Americans were often subjected to, for example, exclusion from basic social services such as education, healthcare, and welfare. The Black Panther Party, BPP, responded not merely with protest, but with a powerful and practical community-based survival programs that directly addressed the inequalities. These programs were not acts of charity, they were political tools designed to restore dignity, build self-reliance, and ultimately empower African Americans to resist racial discrimination with confidence and purpose. One of the most transformative of these programs was the Free Breakfast for Children program. The logic behind it was both simple and profound. A hungry child cannot learn, and a child who cannot learn is less likely to succeed. By providing free, nutritious breakfasts in community centers and schools, the BPP ensured that thousands of children began their day nourished and ready to concentrate. This seemingly small intervention had major ripple effects. It improved school attendance, boosted academic performance, and allowed young people to confidently see themselves as capable and deserving of educational success, in contrast to the societal narrative that had long devalued Black lives. In this way, the program laid the foundation for intellectual empowerment and long-term resistance to systemic inequality. The BPP's literacy initiatives further deepened this empowerment and confidence building. In the African American families, by organizing tutoring sessions, reading groups, and political education classes, the BPP helped community members develop the tools to navigate institutions, understand legal systems, and speak with authority. For people who were historically denied access to quality education, this represented a reclaiming of voice and ownership. With improved literacy came the confidence to question injustice, demand change, and actively participate in the fight for civil rights. Another key dimension of the BPP's survival programs was the establishment of community clinics and childcare centers. These were not just spaces for treatment and supervision, they were hubs of community solidarity and resistance. The clinics offered free medical services such as vaccinations, health screenings, and prenatal care to families who had long been ignored by public health systems. These services not only saved lives, but also challenged the myth that Black communities were incapable of managing their own welfare. The childcare centers, meanwhile, served dual purposes. They gave working parents relief and peace of mind, and they instilled in children a sense of cultural pride and self-worth from a young age. In both cases, the BPP created infrastructures of care that modeled what racial justice in practice could look like. Collectively, these survival programs did more than meet urgent needs. They transformed how Black people saw themselves and their place in society. They proved that African Americans could with confidence organize, lead, and sustain their own communities without relying on discriminatory institutions. The Black Panther Party, BPP, also made significant strides in their campaign to have African American history taught in Black schools, an effort that formed a crucial part of their broader mission to instill confidence and cultural pride among African Americans during the 1960s and 1970s. Recognizing that the dominant Eurocentric curriculum had long erased or distorted the contributions of Black people, the BPP understood that this educational neglect reinforced feelings of inferiority among Black students. To counter this, they argued that learning about African heritage, resistance movements, and Black achievements would promote self-acceptance and a deeper sense of identity. By reclaiming history as a tool for liberation, the BPP transformed education from a system of alienation into one of empowerment. This activism directly influenced the development of Black studies programs in universities and colleges across the country, particularly in urban areas where the Black Power movement had a strong presence. Although implementation at the primary and secondary levels faced greater institutional resistance, the demand for culturally relevant education gained momentum, especially where local communities supported the call for reform. Over time, their efforts led to the gradual inclusion of African American content in school curricula, helping Black learners see themselves represented in the stories they studied. While the BPP did not completely overhaul the education system, they succeeded in reframing the national conversation around race and curriculum, laying the foundation for future reforms. In doing so, they empowered a generation of African Americans with the knowledge, pride, and self-belief needed to challenge systemic discrimination with a clear understanding of their historical strength and value. As the philosophy gained momentum, it inspired both grassroots action and national policy reforms that reshaped the political, social, and economic landscape of Black communities. One of the most significant achievements was that the most obvious forms of racial discrimination ended, marking a turning point in the struggle for civil rights. Public segregation in schools, transport, and facilities was dismantled, and African Americans began to claim their rightful place as equal citizens. This period also saw a sharp decline in racial violence and tension. The assertive stance of Black Power activists, who demanded respect and accountability, discouraged overt racist attacks, and made Black communities more unified and resilient. As African Americans increasingly gained access to political participation, more were elected to public offices. This not only gave Black citizens a stronger voice in policymaking, but also instilled confidence in the broader community, proving that leadership and power were attainable. Similarly, affirmative action policies for federal employment were introduced, creating job opportunities that had previously been denied due to systemic racism. These political and legislative gains were foundational in restoring dignity and rights to African Americans. At the same time, the Black Power movement inspired real improvements in the social and economic lives of African Americans. Housing and public facilities for Black communities were improved, particularly in urban areas where activists demanded better services and living conditions. These improvements contributed to healthier, safer, and more dignified environments, which in turn instilled pride and confidence among residents. Education also saw progress. Black literacy improved significantly due to grassroots literacy programs and a new emphasis on educational self-help. As more individuals acquired reading and writing skills, the dependence on state grants and welfare was limited, further encouraging self-reliance. In conclusion, the Black Power philosophy instilled high confidence amongst African Americans to challenge discrimination in the United States of America and fundamentally transformed the African American freedom struggle. Through militant self-defense, community empowerment, and cultural pride actions, African Americans replaced fear with defiance, dependency with self-reliance, and submission with resistance. While controversial, Black Power philosophy gave African Americans the tools to challenge systemic racism on their own terms. The Panthers' survival programs, the 10-Point Plan, and the unapologetic celebration of Black identity all contributed to a lasting psychological and political shift. As former Panther Erica Huggins reflected, "We didn't just want a seat at the table, we built our own table." This ethos of self-determination remains the movement's most enduring legacy, inspiring subsequent generations to continue the fight for justice.